Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shiur.
Shalom Aleichem and welcome to today's Daf Yomi Maseches Shabbos Daf Aleph. Says the Mishnah, Yitzios HaShabbos. How many different variations do we have regarding the melacha, the form of forbidden activity on Shabbos called the Meleches Hoitza'ah, carrying out an object, a chayfetz, from one rishus to the other, from one domain to another domain. For instance, from a rishus hayachid, from a private domain, to a rishus harabim, to a public domain. How many different forms and variations of this melacha can we find? Says the Mishnah, Yitzias HaShabbos Shtayim Shein Arba Bifnim. We have a total of 4 for the person standing inside, as the Mishnah will illustrate for us. Now we know that on Shabbos, one is meant to refrain, to rest from doing malachas, from doing specific activities. Now, of course, malachas here is not referring to carrying heavy loads. It's referring to specific, significant forms of activity, which are the lamates malachas, the 39 malachas, which we learn from the Melechas HaMishkan. Why do we learn it from the Melechas HaMishkan, from the construction of the Mishkan? Because in the beginning of Parshas Vayakel, when the Torah tells us that 6 days, Sheishes Yomim Te'asu Malacha, Malacha is meant to be performed. However, on Shabbos, that is Shabbos on Hashem, a day of rest to Hashem, and Malacha is not meant to be performed on Shabbos. Now, right next to that, the Torah describes the Melechas HaMishkan, the construction of the Mishkan. Therefore, Chazal learned from this smichas, and the fact that the Torah joins both of these parshas together. We're meant to learn one from the other. What form of malacha is the Torah referring to when it says that on Shabbos you're meant to refrain and rest from doing malachas? We're referring to specific activities, specific malachas, which were employed, which were applied to the construction, to the Melechas HaMishkan. Those are considered significant malachas. Those are malachas of accomplishment, of creating, of crafting. And those malachas, yes, during the 6 days of the week, we're meant to perform those malachas, to use those activities to create, to build, to accomplish. However, on Shabbos, we want to refrain, to rest from those specific malachas. Our job on Shabbos is to keep away from those physical accomplishments and pursue ruchni, spiritual accomplishments, as the Ramban explains in Chumash. So on Shabbos, we're meant to refrain from those 39 significant malachas, the lamates malachas. Now, one of those lamates malachas, actually the last one on the list, is the malach of hoitzah. As the Mishnah tells us, hamoitzi mirishus l'rishus, one who carries out from one rishus, one domain, to the other rishus, to the other domain. For instance, from a rishus hayachid, a domain which is a private domain. For example, if it's enclosed by a fence, it is meant to be used by individuals, not by the public. So one who carries an item from that rishus and transfer it to a rishus harabim, for instance, a street or a marketplace which is designated for public use. That is the malacha beitzah. Same thing in the reverse. If he is machnas, he brings an item from the rishus harabim into the rishus hayachid, that also is considered to be haitzah. Hachnasa also goes under the banner of haitzah, since he is being moitzi, he's uprooting the item from its current environment, from the location where it is now found in the rishus harabim, and bringing it into the rishus hayachid. So we have 2 forms, 2 variations of the melacha of haitzah, either taking something out from a rishus hayachid to a rishus harabim, that is haitzah, or hachnasa, bringing back in an item from rishus harabim to rishus hayachid. Now we know that in order for a melacha haitzah to be considered a melacha de'iraisa, it requires 2 conditions. Firstly, it needs to have 2 elements. It needs to contain 2 parts, an akira and a hanocha. It needs to be uprooted, lifted off the ground of one rishus, that is the akira, and needs to be deposited, it needs to be put down into the other rishus. So it needs an akira and a hanocha. The second condition is that the entire malacha needs to be performed by one individual. He needs to do the malacha from the beginning, from the akira all the way to the hanocha. But if 2 people both contribute to the malacha, say one does the akira and the other completes it with the hanocha, in that case, it is not a malacha min ha-Torah, but merely it's asa midrabanan. Now, the malacha of haitzah certainly carries with it the same onshim as other malachas of Shabbos, which is A chi of chatos, if it's done b'shoigig, if inadvertently one carries an item out, he needs to bring a karban chatos. If it is done b'mezid, willingly and purposely, in that case, the einish is kares, his years are shortened. If there are edim, the witnesses that testify and they warned him, in that case his einish is skila, he's liable to be put to death by stoning. So that is the halacha of the Maseches Haitzah. If it's done by one individual, from the beginning, from the akira all the way to the hanacha, that is considered to be a melacha doiraisa and issa doiraisa. But if it's only halfway, if he only does the akira or the hanacha, it's not an issa doiraisa, only an issa d'rabbanan. Says the Mishnah. If so, Yitzias HaShabbos, how many different variations, how many different examples of the melacha Haitzah on Shabbos can we find? Shtayim, we have two that are melachos doiraisa. For instance, if he does Haitzah completely on his own, he takes an item out, transfers an item from Rishus Yachid to Rishus Rabbim, he does the akira and the hanacha. Or, if he brings an item in, he's machnes, he does achnasa. He picks an item off the Rishus Rabbim and brings it into Rishus Yachid and deposits it there. In that case, we have Shtayim, two examples of the melacha of Haitzah, which are melachos min haTorah, which are biblical halachos, biblical isur. Shehein arba, we have another two examples, which will be only a rabbinic isur, a rabbinic prohibition, isur d'rabbanan. If he only does half the malacha, for instance, he only does the akira, he uproots it, he lifts it off the ground, but he does not complete the malacha, in that case, it's only an isur d'rabbanan. We have two examples of this. So we have a total of 4 cases. Shtayim, which are d'oraisa, shehein arba. If we add another 2, which are isuri d'rabbanan, we have a total of 4 bifnim for the person standing inside. The Mishnah will give us an example of a balabayis, a homeowner standing inside his doorway, and a poor man standing outside. So we have 4 types of melacha haitzah for the person standing inside. The same thing can be applied to the person standing outside, to the ani. The same thing can be applied to the ani standing outside. We have 2 melachos min haTorah. In addition, we have 2 melachos midrabanan. For instance, if the ani standing outside will lift an item off the Rishus Rabbim, bring it into the Rishus HaYachid and deposit it there, that is a melacha v'achnasa, and that is a melacha d'oraisa. Or if he does it in the reverse, he takes an item out of Rishus HaYachid and brings it to him, to Rishus Rabbim. We have 2 examples of issa d'oraisa. Or if he merely does the akira, which is half the melacha, in that case it's not a melacha d'oraisa, but merely a melacha d'rabbanan. So you have a total of 4 for the ani as well. Says the Mishnah Keitzad. The Mishnah will illustrate for us these types of examples. The ani, the poor man standing outside in the Rishus Rabbim, ubalabayis b'fnim, the balabayis, the homeowner standing inside in Rishus HaYachid. Says the Mishnah. Here we will have 2 examples of melachos min haTorah that are pertaining to the ani. For example, Pasha the ani es yadei l'fnim. The ani extended his hand inside, meaning he picked up an item from the Rishus Rabbim and extended his hand into the Rishus HaYachid, v'nosan l'soich yodei shebalabayis, and deposited the item into the hand of the balabayis. So the ani did the entire malacha. He did the akira outside and the hanacha inside into the hand of the balabayis. So this is a malacha of achnasa, which is a malacha d'oraisa for the ani. Another example of a malacha d'oraisa for the ani, oy shenotal misoicha. If the ani extended his empty hand inside into the home, picked an item off the hand of the balabayis, by doing so he did the akira. He uprooted an item from Rishus HaYachid, v'hoitzi, and brought it out towards him into the Rishus Rabbim, and put it down in the Rishus Rabbim. So once again he performs the entire malacha all on his own, all by himself. In this case, ha'ani chayav, the ani is liable. It is a melacha min haTorah, and he's chayav achatas. Balabayis pata, but the balabayis is exempt, because the balabayis is simply an innocent bystander. Rashi explains, not only is he pater, is he exempt from einish, but it is actually mutter. It's permitted for him to do so, since he's not taking any part and not contributing at all to the malacha, to the activity of Haitzah. It was done exclusively by the ani. So we have 2 examples where the ani is performing a malacha d'oraisa. In the first case, he did the malacha of hachnasa. In the second case, he did the malacha of Haitzah. Continues the Mishnah. We have another 2 cases for the balabayis as well, which mirror these same cases. Pashat Balabais Esyada Lechutz. Balabais was inside. He extended his hand, which had an item in it, outside to the Rishus HaRabim. So he did the Akira inside, he lifted it off the Rishus HaYachid and extended his hand outside with the item, and deposited the item into the hands of the Ani. By doing so, he did Hanacha in Rishus HaRabim. So the Baal Bayis completed the entire Malacha, from the Akira in Rishus HaYachid all the way to the Hanacha in Rishus HaRabim. So this is the Malacha of Haitzah. Or in the reverse, or he took an item from the hand of the Ani in Rishus HaRabim and brought it inside to him, to Rishus HaYachid, the Hichnis, and did the Hanacha in Rishus HaYachid. In both these cases, the Baal Bayis performed the entire Malacha. In the first case, he did the Malacha of Haitzah. In the second case, the Malacha of Achnasa. And as a result, Baal Bayis Chayiv, the Baal Bayis is liable. He needs to bring a Chatas if it was done b'Shogeg. However, if the Ani Potter, the Ani is exempt, because he's simply an innocent bystander. He hadn't contributed at all to the malacha of the Baal Bayis. So in summary, the Reisha, the first part of the Mishnah, lists us two cases of a malacha d'oraisa for the Ani, either the malacha of Hachnasa or the malacha of Haitzah. In both cases, the Ani did both the Akira and the Hanacha. In the first case, he lifted the item off the Rishus HaRabim, brought it inside and deposited the item in the Rishus HaYachid, that is the Malach of Achnasa. Or in the reverse, he lifted the item off the Rishus HaRabim, lifted the item off the Rishus HaYachid and brought it back outside into the Rishus HaRabim. That is the Malach of Haitzah. Since he did both elements, both the Akira and the Hanacha, the Ani is Chayiv in both cases, and the Baal Bayis is Potter. The Mishnah proceeded to describe the same two types of examples regarding the Baal Bayis. The first one was the Baal Bayis doing the Malach of Haitzah, where he lifted an item off the Rishus HaYachid and brought it out to Rishus HaRabim. He did the Malacha from the beginning to the end, the Akira and the Hanacha, he is Chayiv. The same in the reverse. If he did the Malacha of Achnasa, he picked an item off the Rishus HaRabim, brought it inside into the Rishus HaYachid, being that he did the entire Malacha, both the Akira and the Hanacha, he and only he is Chayiv. So we have two examples of a malacha d'oraisa for the Ani and two examples of a biblical malacha for the Baal Bayis. Let's proceed to the Seifa, to the second part of the Mishnah, which describes half malachas. Cases where the individual only did a half a malacha. He only did, for example, the Akira, and somebody else completed the Hanacha for him. In this case, he did not perform a malacha d'oraisa, but merely an Issa d'Rabbanan. Continues the Mishnah. Pashat ha'ani es yadi lifnim. The Ani initiated the malacha by picking up an item off the Rishus HaRabim. So he did the Akira, but he didn't do the Hanacha, because when he extended his hand inside with the item, the Baal Bayis, v'natal Baal Bayis, Maseches Baal Bayis, picked the item off his hand, and he did the Hanacha. So the Ani only did the Akira. Or in the reverse, Oisha Nasan L'Soicha, or the Baal Bayis does the Akira, he picks the item off the Rishus HaYachid and he puts it into the outstretched hand of the Ani. So the Baal Bayis did the Akira, but the Ani took the item back outside, v'hoitzi, and he took it outside and he did the Hanacha. So in this case, who did the Akira? The Baal Bayis did the Akira, but only the Akira. He did not complete the Malach. In this case, we have two examples of individuals who only did Akiras. In the first case, it was the Ani. In the second case, it was the Baal Bayis. Since it was only a half a Malacha, it certainly does not constitute a Meleches Haitzah min HaTorah, and indeed Shneim Turim both are Potter from the Einish of Echatas or Skila Okaris, since they did not do a Malacha d'oraisa. However, it is an Issa d'Rabbanan, because doing a half a Malacha is also Asa d'Rabbanan. Finally, says the Mishnah, what if the Ani initiated the proceedings, the Baal Bayis initiated the proceedings, Pashad Baal Bayis es Yodei L'chutz, Baal Bayis extended his hand outward, he took an item from the Rishus HaYachid, so he did the Akira, and extended his hand to Rishus HaRabim, v'natal Ani Masoich, and the Ani picked it off his hand, and the Ani completed the Malacha by doing the Hanacha. So here we have the Baal Bayis who did the Akira, or in the reverse, the Ani did the Akira, or the Ani did the Akira outside and placed the item into the outstretched hand of the Baal Bayis. So the Ani did the Akira, uprooted the item off the Rishus HaRabim, but he did not complete the Malacha, because the Baal Bayis took the item inside into the Rishus HaYachid and deposited it there. In this case, Shneim Turim, Indeed, both are pater because only a half a malacha was done by each individual. In the first case of the last clause of the Mishnah, the balabayis did the akira. In the last case, the ani did the akira. So you have two examples of an individual doing the akira, one for the ani, one for the balabayis. Since he didn't do the complete malacha, it is not an issa deraisa, it is only an issa d'rabbanan. So in summary, we have another 4 cases in the latter part of the Mishnah, in the Seifa of the Mishnah, which involve an issa d'rabbanan. We have 4 examples of an individual doing merely a half a malacha, the half of akira, of uprooting, of lifting an item off the rishus, but not completing the malacha by concluding with the hanacha. In this case, it is an issa d'rabbanan. 2 of them were involving the ani, where the ani did the akira. 2 of them involved the balabayis doing the akira. So in summary, let's go back to the beginning of the Mishnah. Now we understand the opening statement of the Mishnah. Yitzias HaShabbos, how many variations of Yitzias of the Malacha of Hitzah do we have on Shabbos? Says the Mishnah, we have 2 categories. We have the category of a Malacha min HaTorah, which is biblically prohibited, which is a full and complete malacha involving an akira and a hanacha, uprooting an item from one domain and depositing it in a different domain. That is an isser min haTorah. That is a malacha havayitzah min haTorah. One who does that is liable for chatas, kares, or skila. In addition, we have half malachas, which are merely isser d'rabbanan. So shtayim is referring to the 2 malachas which are min haTorah. If one does the akira and the hanacha, for instance, if the ani does the akira from the Rishus HaRabim, brings it inside to Rishus HaYachid and does the hanacha there, the malacha of achnasa, or in the reverse, he takes the item from the Rishus HaYachid, does the akira, and brings it out to Rishus HaRabim where he does the hanacha, and that, in those 2 cases, the ani has performed the malacha min haTorah. We have shein arba, we have another 2 which are the malacha d'rabbanan, where the ani merely lifted the item and did not conclude the malacha. We have 2 such examples where the ani lifts it from Rishus HaRabim, and the balabayis is the one that actually did the hanacha in Rishus HaYachid. So we have 2 such examples in the second part of the Mishnah, for a total of 4 cases for the ani, 2 min haTorah and 2 min d'rabbanan. Similarly, regarding the balabayis, we have 2 cases which are malachas min haTorah. We have the case where the balabayis does the akira and the hanacha, and he is mitzi. He takes an item from the Rishus HaYachid and brings it out to Rishus HaRabim. That is the malacha of Hitzah. On the reverse, he chooses to take an item from the Rishus HaRabim, brings it into the Rishus HaYachid. He does the akira outside and the hanacha inside. Those are 2 examples of chiyuvim min haTorah for the balabayis. In the Sefer of the Mishnah, we have another 2 examples where the balabayis is merely the akira. He lifted the item off the Rishus HaYachid, but the ani was the one who concluded by doing the hanacha outside. So we have 2 examples of akira without a hanacha, which are merely isuri d'rabbanan. So we have shtayim, which are the deraisa. Shein arba, if we add another 2, where he merely did the akira without the hanacha, we have a total of 4 cases. 2 that are min haTorah and 2 min d'rabbanan. Rashi points out, why does the Mishnah merely list the half malachas which involve the akira, since the cases also involve somebody doing a hanacha, which is also half of a malacha, which is also midrabanan. So why does the Mishnah focus and list only the akiras? Why do we ignore the other half of the malachas? If you would add all the hanachas as well, we would end up with many more cases. Why does the Mishnah only choose to focus on the akiras? And the Mishnah tells us that we have shtayim shein arba, we have 2 that are complete malachas, we have another 2 that are half malachas. For instance, if he only does the akira and not the hanacha, what about the hanacha without the akira? We should add that to the list as well. It says Rashi, the Mishnah only lists cases which are either isurim min haTorah, complete malachas d'oraisa, involving an akira and hanacha, or cases which involve a half malacha, which can lead to an issa d'oraisa. The Chacham were concerned that this malacha, this half malacha, if concluded, if you will take it till the end, will actually lead to a malacha d'oraisa, and that is only involving akira. If a person lifts an item, does an akira, we are concerned that perhaps he will conclude it, complete the malacha, and come to an issa d'oraisa. So although you're right, hanacha is also an issa d'oraisa, an issa d'rabbanan, but the Mishnah chooses to focus only on those examples which are either actually Issa Deraisa, like a complete malacha, or a part of a malacha which can lead, which can conclude in an Issa Deraisa, and that is the Akira, which can be concluded into an Issa Deraisa if completed with the Hanacha. But certainly, of course, the half malacha of Hanacha is also an Issa D'Rabbanan, but the Mishnah just doesn't list it in the list of Shtayim Shem Arba. And Taisa asks Akasha, why does the Tana choose to begin Maseches Shabbos with the Malacha V'Etzah, which is actually the last one on the list of the 39 Malachas, the Lamtes Malachas? Hamaytzim Mishus is the last one on the list. So why do we elaborate, do we discuss this Malacha before anything else? Taisa gives several reasons. One thing Taisa says, it is Davar HaHoiva, it's very common. It is the most common Malacha to be found on Shabbos, and therefore the Mishnah chooses to dwell and focus and elaborate on this malacha because of its frequency, of its being more common than other malachas, and therefore the Tana deems it most important and most needed to be placed first and discussed right at the outset of the Maseches Shabbos. Tosfos gives another answer, because Meleches Haitzah is very different than all the other Lamatas Malachas. Tosfos says the Meleches Haitzah is actually a Malacha Gruhi. It's an inferior type of Malacha. Why is that? Because typically all the Malachas involve creating, accomplishment, making something new, building, dyeing wool. You're accomplishing, you're making something, you're crafting, you're creating. A Malacha Haitzah is none of the above. You're not creating anything new. You're not even altering something. You're merely transferring the location. You're taking something from this location and transferring it to a different location. There's no creation here. You're not making anything new. Perhaps you're changing the use of the object. You're taking it from one environment where it is used one way. You're putting it to a different location where it serves you differently. You're changing. You're slightly altering the designation, the shimush of the chayfetz. It is very minor transformation taking place here. So it's very dissimilar to the other malachas on Shabbos. And therefore Tosfos says this is a malacha groi. It's an inferior type of malacha. And therefore the Mishnah chooses to dwell on this chiddush, on this novel malacha. Yes, even this is considered to be a malacha, has the status of a significant form of activity of a malacha d'oraisa. It is one of the lamates malachas on Shabbos. You're changing the location of the item. You're uprooting it from one environment and depositing it in a different environment. It will be used differently there. You will have use of it in a rishus harabim rather than a rishus hayachid. Its designation slightly changes. Even this is considered to be a significant form of malacha. It is one of the lamates malachas on Shabbos. Therefore, this is a chiddush, this is a novelty. And therefore, the Mishnah chooses to focus and to open Maseches Shabbos with this tremendous chiddush, with this malacha of haitzah. Even though it's merely a malacha grua, nevertheless, it is considered to be a significant malacha, just like any other malacha on Shabbos. Now, Tosfos points out that on account of the fact that Meleches Haitzah is a malacha grohi, there are very interesting ramifications to this. Firstly, we find that although regarding other malachas, we don't need a special source verse, a pasuk, which describes other malachas. As we mentioned earlier, the malachas are learned from the malachas HaMishkan. Those forms of activity that we find, that were employed, that we use regarding the construction of the Mishkan, they are significant forms of malachas which are also on Shabbos. Regarding the malachas Haitzah, even though that too was used in the Mishkan, as the Gemara describes, their transporting of the Mishkan involved Haitzah and Achnasa. They would take the crushim, the beams of the Mishkan, and when they would transport it, they would lift it up onto the wagon, which was a rishus hayachid, because it was elevated 10 tefachim from the ground. So by doing so, they would be mitzi. They were taking an item from the rishus haram, from the street, and lifting it up to the rishus hayachid. That was the malacha of hachnasa, and they would do haitzah as well by taking it off the agala, off the wagon, down back into the rishus harabim. So although this activity was used and employed during the Melechas HaMishkan for the sake of the Mishkan, for the sake of carrying the Mishkan. Nevertheless, we require a special pasuk to teach us that Melechas Haitzah is also on Shabbos. Taisus brings the pasuk which says Al Yeitze Ish Min Kaimai B'Yom HaShabbos regarding the man. The pasuk says a person should not go out of his place on Shabbos, and the drush is Al Yeitze Im HaKli Lukat Haman. A person shouldn't go out with a kli, with a utensil, Lakat Haman, to gather the man. So we learn from here that one is not meant to carry anything out with him. He's not meant to be mighty, to transfer an item from one shus to the other. So we have a pasuk. We need a makar. In addition to the fact that we find in the Mishkan, we need a pasuk which teaches us the Melech HaVeitzah. Why is that necessary? It says Taisus, for the aforementioned reason, because the Melech HaVeitzah is a Melacha Grui, it's an inferior form of a Melacha. Therefore, it's not sufficient that we merely find it in the Mishkan. We require a special pasuk for that. Not only that, says Taisus, we actually two psukim. Rashi brings the other pasuk from the Gemara in Daf Vav that we learn from when the Yidden donated for the Mishkan. The pasuk says they made an announcement, and this was on Shabbos. Don't bring your donation from the Rishus HaYachid, from the Machne Yisrael, which was the encampment of the Yisrael. Don't bring it to the Machne Leviyah, the place where the Levim camped. And Rashi explains because that was considered to be a Rishus HaRabim, because everybody there was a multitude of Yidden found near Moshe Rabbeinu. That was considered to be a public domain. So the pasuk tells us that they announced, don't be mighty mishus l'rishus. Don't transfer an item from the Rishus HaYachid to the Rishus HaRabim on Shabbos. So we require two psukim actually for the Melech HaVeitzah. Why is that? Says Taisus. Because the Melech HaVeitzah is a Melacha Grui. It's an inferior form of Melacha. Therefore, we need two psukim. Why? One, to refer to the Baal HaBayis, who is doing the Melacha from inside his home, as the Mishnah described, and one is for the Ani, who is doing the Melacha from the outside. So although they're very strikingly similar forms of the Melech HaVeitzah, they're both transferring items from one shus to the other. Nevertheless, since there are slight variations, one is doing it from the inside, one is doing it from the outside, perhaps we could draw distinctions between the two. We can make chilukim. Perhaps regarding Haitzah, we can say there's a difference between the Baal HaBayis, who are actually getting rid of an item. He's taking something from inside and getting rid of it. Perhaps that's considered to be Haitzah. But if the Ani, who is taking an item from the Rishus HaYachid and bringing it out to him, and Rishus HaRabim, he's bringing it to himself, that is not really Haitzah. That's not considered to be removing an item. He's bringing it. So we can find all kinds of ways to draw a distinction between one case and the other. Therefore, we need two psukim. One to be applied for the Baal HaBayis, that his transferring of items is considered to be a Melech HaVeitzah, and one, a special pasuk for the Ani as well. This is all based on the fact that Melechas Haitzah is a Melacha Grui. So it's not enough that we find in the Mishkan, we need a pasuk, not only one pasuk, we need two psukim. One for the Ani, one for the Baal HaBayis. And therefore, once again, Taisus explained that's why the Masechta chose to start off with this Melacha, which is a novel form of Melacha, which is a Chiddush. Even this is considered to be a Melacha on Shabbos. Continues the Gemara. Tanan Asam, we have a Mishnah, a Maseches Shabbos. Now, once again, in our Mishnah, we have a list of Shtayim Shem Arba. We have 4 variations for the Baal HaBayis and 4 variations for the Ani, for a total of 8. In Maseches Shabbos, the Mishnah lists a list of Shtayim Shem Arba, different types of examples, where the formula of Shtayim Shem Arba, 2, which equal 4, can be applied. The Mishnah also lists amongst them the Melech HaVeitzah. But the Mishnah says that the Melech HaVeitzah involves Shtayim Shem Arba, 2, which equal 4, and not, which equals 8. In our Mishnah, we have a total of 8, 4 for the Baal HaBayis, 4 for the Ani. In Mishnah Shavuos, it only gives us a list, a total of 4. The one wants to know why. Why this discrepancy? How come by us we ended up with a total of 8, and over there only a total of 4? Tonight also we learned the Mishnah there. Shavuos, Shtayim Shem Arba. The halacha of Shavuos, of making an oath, a person makes a promise, a shvua, that lahara lahetiv, the pasuk says a person speaks out a shvua that he will do lahara, something bad, or lahetiv, to do something good. For instance, I will not eat, I will refrain from eating. That is lahara. Or lahetiv, I will do something good, I will eat. So there are 2 examples of a shvua. If one transgresses the shvua, one's over on the shvua, needs to bring a korban. And from the ribuy of the pasuk, we darshan not only does a shvua apply to an event in the future? I will do, I won't do. It also applies to a past event. If he says, I did or didn't eat, achalti v'lo achalti, and indeed it turns out to be false, he is liable to be a korban. So shvuos is shtayim. We begin with 2 references to future events. I will, I won't eat. Shein arba, but we add another 2 regarding past events. I have eaten, I have not eaten. That also is considered to be in this category of shvu, which involves a korban. So for a total of 4. Yediyas hatuma, the knowledge, the awareness of tuma. One becomes aware of the fact that he was tamei when he ate kachim or when he came into the Beis Hamikdash. In that case, he needs to bring a korban. So we have 2 examples of chiyuvim, of liabilities, of yediyas hatuma. One becomes aware of the fact that he was tamei. He didn't know that he was tamei. He forgot that he was tamei when he ate the kachim. He forgot that he was tamei when he entered the Beis Hamikdash, and now he becomes aware of the fact that he was tamei at that time. So those are shtayim, 2 examples. Shein arba, but they equal 4. We have another 2 examples, which the Gemara adds to this, that if he remembers that he was tamei, but he forgot that this item is kachim and he ate it, or he remembered that he was tamei, he was aware about his status of tumah, but he didn't realize that this was a Beis Hamikdash. So in that case, he forgot the significance of of the item that he was eating. He forgot the significance of the place that he was entering. Those are another 2 examples of forgetfulness, which also require a korban when he becomes aware. So we have yediyas hatuma, awareness regarding a transgression of tumah. Shtayim, we have 2 examples. Shein arba, which equal 4. The 2 examples are when he forgot that he was tamei and he went ahead and ate kachim, or he went into Beis Hamikdash. Those are 2. We had another 2 when the forgetfulness involved forgetting that this is kachim, forgetting that this is the Beis Hamikdash. So we have another 2 examples. So we have a total of 4 cases. Another case where the formula shtayim shemarba is applied, maris negoim, different shades of white which constitute a nega, is shtayim. We have 2. Shein arba, which equal 4. The 2 are se'es and baharis described in the Torah. We add another 2 from the drasha. The pasuk says sapachas. We meant to add a supplemental maris negoim. We add 1 to this ace. We add 1 to the baharis, and we end up with 4 different shades of white which constitute a nega. So we have shtayim, we begin at 2, we end with 4. Yetzir Shabbos. How many different forms of haitzah, the malacha of haitzah on Shabbos do we have? We begin with shtayim, with 2. Shein arba, we end off with 4. Says the Gemara, why this discrepancy in numbers? Why by us? In our Mishnah, does the Mishnah give us a list of 4 for the person standing inside, and another 4 for the fellow standing outside, for a total of 8. Why is it different over there? The Tanish time Shem Arba V'Suloi, we only end up with a total of 4. Why this discrepancy in the numbers? Says more very simple. Over here in Maseches Shabbos, this is the place to elaborate, to go into the halachas of Shabbos in great detail. This is the context, and therefore the Mishnah elaborates on all the details. Tani Avos, the Mishnah discusses the primary malacha of Haitzah, which is being moitzi, taking an item out from the Shusayachat to Shusarab. That is considered to be Avos, because that is described in the pasuk. The pasuk tells us we're not meant to be moitzi, to take an item out from the private domain to the public domain. V'tani told us, in addition, the Mishnah also gets involved in describing the toilades, the derivatives of the malach of Eitzah. Rashi explains is referring to hachnasa, taking an item in from a shesram shesayachid. Why is this called a tolada? Rashi explains the Gemara learns this from a svara. It's not a clear pasuk, but it's a svara, it's a logic. Mali afuki, mali ayuli. What is the difference between transferring an item from the Rishas Yachid to Rishas Rabbim or transferring in the reverse? The point is, the bottom line is you are changing the location, the environment of the item. You're uprooting it from its present location and you're transferring it to a different location. And therefore, this is the svara where the Gemara derives the malach of achnasa. It's considered to be a tailada, a derivative of the av, of the father of the primary malacha, which is haitzah. So, in summary, our Mishnah elaborates on all different variations of malachas of Eitzah. The Mishnah describes taking an item out, carrying an item from Rishas Yachid Rishas Rabbim, as well as bringing an item in from Rishas Rabbim Rishas Yachid. Therefore, we end up with so many different examples. Hasam, however, over there in the Mishnah Shavuos, the Lavik Shabbos, it's not the It's not the primary location of Hilchos Shabbos. That is not the place meant to elaborate and to go into Hilchos Shabbos in great detail. The Mishnah is merely discussing a list of different scenarios where the formula of Shnayim Shemar applies. So the Mishnah merely cites it in short form. Therefore, Avos Tani, Tolis Leitani. Therefore, the Mishnah merely makes reference to the Avos, to examples of being Maitzeh Chayfetz, Haitzah, taking it from the Shusayachah to Shusarab, but it doesn't get involved in Teiladis, in bringing an item in Achlasa from Shusarab and Shusayachah. Therefore, it only comes up with a total of 8, as the Gemara will elaborate. Says the Gemara. Again, Hasam Dal Vikar Shabbos, so it's not the main place to discuss Hilchos Shabbos. Avos Tani, Tolis Leitani. Okay, says the Gemara, Avos Ma'iniu. What do you mean by Avos? Yitzias. Taking an item out, carrying an item out from Shusayachah to Shusarab, right? That is Yitzias. How many Yitzias, how many different forms, variations of Yitzias can we find? Yitzias Treyavian. We only find 2. There are 2 types of Yitzias. One would be, for instance, the Balabayis, taking an item out from Shusayachah to Shusarab. That is one form of Haitzah. Or the Ani doing it. The Ani who is outside. He can do Haitzah by lifting an item off the Shusayachah and bringing it out to him to Shusarab. So we have merely 2 examples of Haitzah. So how did you come up with 4? If the Mishnah Shavuos is merely discussing Haitzah, how could the Mishnah come up with a total of 4? We only find 2 examples of Haitzah. Says the Gemara, if you propose, how did we come up with 4? Meihen l'chiv, meihen l'ptur. Some are melachas deraisa. If some involve the person doing the complete melacha of Akira and Haitzah and Hanacha, he does the Haitzah in completion from the beginning to the end. Umeihen l'ptur. Some are involving a half melacha, which is not asam deraisa, only derabanan, and therefore we can come up with 4 cases. For instance, 2 examples of chiv would be the Balabayis does the complete melacha. He takes an item from the Shusayachah, brings it out to Shusarab. Or if the Ani does the same, he takes an item from Shusayachah, takes it out to Shusarab. So here we have 2 examples of Eitzah where the individual did the full total melacha, which is Issa Daraisa. Umeihen l'ptur, we have another 2 examples where the person is merely doing a half melacha. For instance, the Balabayis lifts an item off the Shusayachah, he does the Akira, he uproots it from the Shusayachah, but the Ani is the one that takes it from his hand and completes it and does the Hanacha. So we have one example where the Balabayis lifts it off the ground, lifts it off the Shusayachah and extends it out to Shusarab, and the Ani takes it from him and does the Hanacha. Or we can have a slightly different form of this type of case where, for instance, the Ani extends his hand inside, his empty hand inside, and the Balabayis does an Akira, takes an item off the ground, and the Ani takes it from the Balabayis and brings it back out with him. So these are slightly different forms, variations of a half malach, where the Balabayis does the Akira, whether he merely lifts it off the ground and the Ani takes it right there from him, or he lifts it off the ground and extends it outward and the Ani takes it from him in the Shusarab. So we have the Balabayis doing merely a half malacha and he is pater. So we have a total of 4. We have 2 that are deraisa and 2 akiras which are merely derabanan and pater. So is that how you came up with 4? Is that how the Mishnah Shavuos came up with a total of 4? Some are chayiv and some are pater. 2 are discussing complete malachas which are deraisa. 2 are discussing only akiras which are derabanan. That can't be, because the Mishnah in Shavuos lists the cases of Haitzah together next to the 4 maris negoim, the 4 variations of 4 shades of white, which constitute a nega, and that is a deraisa nega. That involves a chiv deraisa. If one is tamei, one is a mitzera, on account of having one of those maris negoim, and when he is tamei, he enters the Beis Hamikdash, he is liable, he is chayiv midaraisa. So the fact that the Mishnah places together both examples of maris negoim with Yitzias HaShabbos, apparently we're discussing cases which are biblical, which are midaraisa, which are chiyuvim. V'hadumi the maris negoim tani. The Mishnah lists the halacha of Haitzah dumya in a similar fashion to maris negoim. Ma hosam kulach l'chiyuva. Just like in negoim, all those shades of white are negoim daraisa and involve chiyuv. If one is tamei and enters the Beis Hamikdash in that state, he is liable midaraisa. Certainly over here regarding Haitzah, when the Mishnah discusses that Yitzias HaShabbos are Shtayim She'em Arba, apparently we're speaking about 4 examples of Haitzah midaraisa. So you can't say that included in those 4 are 2 midrabanans. So we're stuck once again. How did we come up with the number 4? In Shabbos we have 8 cases, because in Shabbos we're discussing various scenarios, because this is the focal point, this is the place to elaborate, and therefore we discuss all kinds of variations, all kinds of different scenarios. In the Mishnah Shavuos we're very limited. We only discuss Yitzias, taking an item out from Rishus Hayachid Rishus Rabbah. If so, we only have 2 examples of Yitzias. How did we come up with 4? We can't say that some are merely Yisur D'Rabbanan. We're not discussing Yisur D'Rabbanan in that Mishnah. So how did we come up with the number 4? El Omer Rav Papa, Hacha D'Ikar Shabbosu, Tane Chiyuvi Upturi. Says Rav Papa, here in Maseches Shabbos, which is the focal point, which is the context of discussion of Hilchos Shabbos. Therefore, the Mishnah indeed discusses cases which are Chiyuv, which are Malachas D'Oraisa, Upturi, and the cases which are merely Yisur D'Rabbanan, and the person is Pater from the Oynesh Min HaTorah. So we discuss D'Oraisas, we discuss the Rabbanas, and that's how we come up with the number 8. Hasam, however, over here, the Ikar Shabbos, which is not the focal point, not the main place of discussion of Hilchos Shabbos. Therefore, we abbreviate things. Chiyuv Tani, we only discuss cases which involve a Chiv D'Oraisa, which involve the person doing the complete malacha from the Akira till the Hanacha. Upturi Le'Tani, however, we don't discuss half malachas which are Patur Min HaTorah. If so, back to square one. How do we come up with 4? Chiyuv Ma'niu Yitzias. What do you mean when you say that the Mishnah Shavuos discusses cases which are Chiyuv Min D'Oraisa? So evidently you're referring to Yitzias, the 2 cases of Haitzah. Either the Ani removes an item from the Rishus Hayachid and brings it to Rishus Rabbim, so he performs the entire malacha on his own, which is a Chiyuv D'Oraisa, or the Baal Bayis does the Haitzah all on his own. So those are only two examples, 2 cases. Yitzias Tarti Havyon. We only have 2. How did you come up with 4? So back to the same kasha. Says the Gemara, no. Shtayim D'Haitzah v'Shtayim D'Achnasa. Yes, indeed. The Mishnah in Shavuos also includes Achnasa, not merely Haitzah. And therefore, we can come up with 4 cases. Simple. 2 cases for the Baal Bayis, 2 cases for the Ani. The Baal Bayis, one will be Haitzah, when he lifted an item off the Rishus Hayachid and brought it into Rishus Rabbim, he did the Akira and the Hanacha. Or in the reverse, he did Achnasa. He did the Akira outside and the Hanacha inside. Similarly, we have 2 cases for the Ani. If he did Haitzah or Achnasa all on his own. So those are 4 examples of Malachas D'Oraisa, where the individual did the Malacha from the beginning to the end. 2 are involving Haitzah and 2 involving Achnasa. Says him about Yitzias Ketani. Doesn't the Mishnah Shavuos use the word Yitzias, which implies we're speaking about taking out an item, carrying out an item from the Rishus Hayachid to Rishus Rabbim? How can you suggest that the Mishnah is including examples of Achnasa? Omar Rav Ashi, yes indeed. Tana, the Tana Achnasa Nami Haitzah Karla. Even Achnasa is also included in the term Haitzah. How do we know that? Mimai Midetzan, because we learned in the Mishnah, Hamaytim Mishus Rishus Chayev. The Mishnah regarding Lamites Malachas lists the malacha of carrying out an item and says Hamaytim Mishus Rishus, one who carries an item out from one domain to the other is Chayev. Mila Yaskina on the Kama'ayil Mishus Haram Mishus Hayachid. Are we not speaking about also a case where one transfers an item, he carries out an item from the Rishus Harabim to Rishus Hayachid? How do we know that? How do we know that the Mishnah is including that case as well? Simple, because in our Mishnah, the Mishnah clearly tells us that Achnasa is also a malacha, is also included in the category of malacha Haitzah. So apparently when the Mishnah there describes Haitzah by saying Hamoitzi Mishus Rishus, it's referring to Achnasa as well, and it refers to it as Hamoitzi. So we see that the term Hamoitzi can be applied to Achnasa as well. Says why? Because Kar Haitzah, so we see that the Mishnah refers to Achnasa in the term Haitzah. The time of my, so why indeed? How can we apply the term Haitzah, which means taking out, to Achnasa, which means taking in? Says the Gemara, time of my, any time one uproots an item from its location, from its place, from its environment. Tana Haitzah Karle. The Tana refers to that as Haitzah. You're uprooting it. You're extracting it from its current location. You're bringing it and transferring it to a different location. So, certainly the Mishnah Shavuos includes a reference to Achnasa as well. The Mishnah says Yitzias HaShabbos, Shtayim Shem Arba. Yitzias includes both forms of the Malacha Veitzah, whether it's actually carrying out an item from Shazechet Shesarabim. For that we have two examples, one the Ani, one the Balabais. Both Malachas D'Oraisa, where they both did the entire Malacha on their own. And we have another two cases of Hachnasa, where either the Ani or the Balabais brought an item in from the Shesarabim Shesayachid, where they did the entire Malacha on their own, the Akir and the Hanacha as well. So we have four cases where an individual did a Malacha of Eitzah min HaTorah, and indeed those are the four cases described in the Mishnah Shavuos. So the Mishnah Shavuos, which is simply making reference to Malachas of Eitzah in a brief manner, doesn't go into cases of half Malachas, cases of Pturim, cases of Isur D'Rabbanan, simply chooses to focus on examples of Isur D'Oraisa, of Malachas D'Oraisa, of which we have a total of four. However, in our Mishnah, which is the Ikar Shabbos, the place to dwell and to focus and elaborate on all the details of the Malachas of Shabbos, we come up with a total of 8 cases, 4 for the Balbayis, 4 for the Ani. Not only do we discuss Malachas D'Oraisa, but also Malachas D'Rabbanan. Rav is coming to answer this kasha. How could you suggest that the term Yitzias HaShabbos cited in the Mishnah Shavuos also will include Hachnasais as well? Says Rav, Rishuyas Ketani. The word Yitzias is not referring to the act of carrying out. It's not a verb. It's referring to the territory, the domain. Yitzias is Rishuyas. Rishuyas is Shabbos Shtayim. There are 2 types of domains on Shabbos, of which involve the Malacha of Haitzah and Achnasa. So the term Yitzias doesn't mean the act of carrying out, but merely the Rishuyas, 2 territories, 2 domains, 2 different types of environments of which the Malacha of Eitzah can be applied to. So when the Mishnah Shavuos says Yitzias HaShabbos Shtayim Shem Arba, the Mishnah simply means Yitzias HaShabbos, there are 2 Rishuyas, 2 types of domains on Shabbos, which can translate into a total of 4 Malachas min HaTorah, 2 belonging to the Balabayas, either Haitzah or Achnasa, 2 belonging to the Ani, either Haitzah or Achnasa, with a total of 4 cases. So Rav agrees to the concept that the Mishnah Shavuos is merely abbreviating the reference to the Malachas of Haitzah, unlike our Mishnah, which elaborates. However, Rav is simply coming to explain how can Achnasa be included in the term Yitzias, because Yitzias is referring to the Rishuyas. So, in summary, the Gemara had a kasha. How come in our Mishnah we have a total of 8 cases, and the Mishnah Shavuos only discusses 4 cases? So, the Gemara said, because over there it's not Ikar Shabbos, it's not the main context, not the main place to discuss and to elaborate on the details of Ikar Shabbos. Therefore, we simply make a short reference, an abbreviated reference to the Malacha of Eitzah on Shabbos. The Gemara began by saying, well, what does Yitzias HaShabbos Shtayim Shem Arba mean? Are we discussing Yitzias, carrying an item out from Shesech Shesarabim? We only have 2 examples of Yitzias, one for the Onev, one for the Bavais. How could you end up with a total of 4? The Gemara said, well, even though we're discussing Yitzias, carrying an item out from Shesech Shesarabim, however, we can come up with 4 cases. 2 that are complete Malachis, one for the Oni, one for the Bavais, and 2 that are half Malachis. If the Bavais merely lifts the item off the ground, he does Akira, 2 forms of Malachas Akira. One is if he lifts it off the ground and the Ani takes it from him in the Rishus HaYachid and does the Hanacha outside, or if the Bavais lifts it off the ground and extends his hand outward and the Ani takes it from his hand there. 2 different forms of half a Malach of Akira. Those are Pturim. So those are the additional 2 cases. Is that what the Mishnah Shavuos means? 4 cases consisting of 2 D'Oraisa, 2 D'Rabbanan, 2 Chiyuv, and 2 Pturim. That can't be. The Mishnah Shavuos merely discusses cases which are Chiyuv. Finally, the Gemara concluded that indeed we're discussing cases which are Malachas D'Oraisa, which are Chayiv. How did we come up with 4? Very simple. 2 are referring to Yitzias, Haitzos, items taken from Shesech Shesarabim, and 2 are referring to Achnasais, items which were brought back in from Shesam Shesech. Both are referring to cases which involve a Malacha D'Oraisa. If so, how could the Mishnah refer to Achnasa with the term Yitzias? The Gemara 2 terutzim. Either the word Yitzia, the term Yitzias HaShabbos, also refers to achnasa. Haitzah mishus ashus, extracting, uprooting an item, taking an item out of its environment and putting it to a different environment, can be referring to either transferring an item from Maseches Shabbos, and in the reverse as well, achnasa is also considered to be haitzah on Shabbos. And Rabbi's teretz was that the term yitzia is not referring to the action, not referring to the verb, it's merely referring to reshuyos. Therefore, when the Mishnah says in Shavuos Yitzias HaShabbos Shtayim, it means there are two types of reshuyos, two types of domains, the Shesach and Shesarabim, which can translate into 4 malachos. Shtayim, the two reshuyos, can translate into 4 variations of malachos haitzah. 2 involving haitzah, taking the item from Shesach and Shesarabim, whether it's the ani doing the complete malacha, or the Baal Bayis doing complete malacha. Shein Arba, we have another 2 examples of achnasa, where the individual did the entire malacha by being machnes a chayvetz from Shesram Shesayachid, whether the ani did it or whether the Baal Bayis did it. So here we have a total of 4 cases, and that is Pshat in the Mishnah Shavuos Yitzias HaShabbos Shtayim Shehein Arba.